This is Michael Popok, Legal AF, with another disgusting chapter in Rudy Giuliani's long public fall from whatever grace he occupied when he was America's mayor. We now have a second woman coming forward and saying that, me too, I have been sexually assaulted and groped by the former mayor. Cassidy Hutchinson. You may not remember, but hopefully you do. She is one of the lead witnesses against Donald Trump, Mark Meadows, and many of the other co-conspirators in Georgia and in Jack Smith's investigations, having been Mark Meadows' right-hand person and assistant all the way through the chaotic days of the White House, through Jan 6th and beyond. She has now said in her memoir, Enough, that's the name of the memoir, and of the theme of this hot take, that on Jan 6th, while she was waiting, of all places, to hear former President Trump give a speech on the ellipse, she was surrounded by John Eastman, who's a co-conspirator in Georgia, the constitutional law scholar who came up with the fake elector scandal, and Rudy Giuliani, who served as captain of Team Crazy and as the de facto attorney general for Donald Trump. And that while she was there, while Eastman watched, Rudy Giuliani got his arms around Cassidy and put his hands under her blazer and under her skirt with a leering smile as John Eastman looked on. This is not the first time this year or this summer that Rudy Giuliani has been accused by a female associate or colleague to have done something sexually inappropriate in attacking her. We already had a case that's still pending in New York State Supreme Court brought by a former colleague of his, Noelle Dunphy, who's suing for $10 million for various forms of sexual harassment and sex discrimination, claiming that she was effectively converted into a sex slave. Put the children away, and I hope you ate your lunch or dinner when you're listening to this. Converted into a sex slave for Rudy Giuliani in return for her compensation related to her being his assistant. That's in Noelle Dunphy's case. In the Cassidy Hutchinson memoir, she writes, and this is a quote from the copy of Enough that The Guardian has obtained. She says that I feel Rudy Giuliani's, frozen fingers trail up my thighs. He tilts his chin up. The whites of his eyes look jaundiced. My eyes dart to John Eastman, who flashes a leering grin. I fight against the tension in my muscles and recoil from Rudy's grip. Filled with rage, I storm through the tent on yet another quest for Mark, meaning Mark Meadows. That's 27-year-old Cassidy Hutchinson, who's basically one of the heroes of the Jan 6 committee, saying that even she, somebody in her position, on her perch of authority, should have been respect, was sexually assaulted and groped by one Rudy Giuliani. Cassidy Hutchinson will go down in history. They might have to build a statue for her out in front of the Capitol, because she had the presence of mind at 25 and 26 to fire the Trump-appointed lawyer, bought and paid for by a Trump PAC, who told her before she testified to the Jan 6 committee that perhaps she should forget what she remembered, that she should say she didn't remember something when she told him that she did remember it. She then, after consulting with her family and her religion, she then fired that lawyer, hired Jody Hunt, who used to be in the Trump administration, also had worked for Jeff Sessions, is a very well-respected lawyer in Washington. And after he counseled her, she then told the truth to the Jan 6 committee about everything she observed about Mark Meadows, from the burning of documents in his fireplace to what she observed with Donald Trump and the Secret Service on the day of the insurrection, Donald Trump sitting in his dining room off the Oval Office instead of doing something about the attack on the Capitol. I mean, every major detail point about Jan 6th and just before, including in December when Rudy Giuliani Again, Mike Flynn, Sidney Powell, Patrick Byrne of Overstock.com got into the White House and started bombarding the president with calls for suspending the Constitution and invoking martial law. That's because we learned about it from Cassidy Hutchinson. She is safely in the arms of Fani Willis and Jack Smith because she is a cooperating witness and she's providing them all the information that they needed for their indictments and ultimately for the trials and evidence against these people at trial. Cassidy Hutchinson will take the stand against Rudy Giuliani in Georgia, probably in DC as well, and Donald Trump and the others, and Mark Meadows. And now she's got this new memoir out, bombshell memoir called Enough, about her being, in addition to all of that, sexually attacked. She talks about the arc in her book of going from Trump's supporter to her disenchantment, very similar to what we've heard from our fellow colleague here on the MeidasTouch Network, Jessica Denson, and her story. And it matches up perfectly with everything we know about Rudy Giuliani, whether you look at the Borat movie, the sequel, in which he thought he was going to make it with Borat's fictional daughter. So he went into the hotel room when thought he was being interviewed by a reporter and started putting his hands down his pants on camera and got caught doing it in a moment that looked like it was fresh out of To Catch a Predator. And then you also have Noelle Dunphy in her lawsuit claiming that she was made a sex slave by Donald Trump. And now continuing #MeToo, you've got a supremely credible, trustworthy, authentic, courageous Cassidy Hutchinson coming forward with her new memoir, Enough. This has been a terrible summer for Rudy Giuliani, the summer of his indictment on 13 counts in Georgia, the summer of him being named for now as an unindicted co-conspirator, that could change, in Jack Smith's DC federal election case. He's been sued by his own former colleague in the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York, Bob Costello, who is 71 years old. Those guys go way back to when Rudy ran the Southern District of New York, but now a lawyer at a law firm up the street from me here who sued him for $1.3 million in outstanding fees for all the work that Bob Costello did for him. You may remember Bob Costello, continuing the MeidasTouch theme, also represented at one time Michael Cohen and went in to talk and testify to the grand jury against the case brought against Trump related to Stormy Daniels. You're following those connected points of Bob Costello? So he gets 13-count felony indicted, Georgia, co-conspirator, unnamed, but we know who it is, in Jack Smith. He's sued by his own lawyer and friend, Bob Costello, for $1.3 million in the last week. And he got a default judgment against him because of his bad behavior and misconduct in the discovery or document information exchange period in the lawsuit for defamation for millions of dollars rightly brought by Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, mother and daughter, election workers in Fulton County, Georgia, who were mercilessly doxxed and attacked by the Trump campaign and Rudy Giuliani hundreds of times to say that they were committing fraud in their counting process when they were not. There's no liability case for a jury to consider. The judge has already given Rudy Giuliani the civil equivalent of the death penalty and found him liable. And the only trial will be on how big of a check the jury is going to force Rudy Giuliani to pay. Now, Rudy Giuliani always takes to the airwaves after things like this happen. He has his own podcast. So do I. Called Legal AF, and we try to tell the truth there. Don't blow smoke or sunshine. The opposite of Rudy Giuliani's approach. We'll hear from Rudy Giuliani. He'll say, as he said before, when he got sued for the lawyer's fees from his buddy, I'm disappointed in Bob Costello, but he overcharged me. The case with Noelle Dunphy, nothing of that is true, even though she has texts and voicemail recordings in which he's disgusting. The Borat thing, he came up with, he had an itch down his pants instead of looking like what he was actually doing, which was fluffing himself. And I'll say something here about Cassidy Hutchinson trying to sell books or being deluded. Yeah, just like E. Jean Carroll tried to sell books too. That didn't mean she wasn't also digitally raped by Donald Trump in a dressing room in a department store. Client and lawyer have very similar traits, it appears, at least according to the report of Cassidy Hutchinson. We're going to bring this kind of information to you in only one place, exclusively on the MeidasTouch network. That's where I do my videos. I do them about every day. I sit on some very valuable real estate, that corner of U.S. law and politics. And then I co-anchor and co-founded the leading podcast devoted to law and politics exclusively on MeidasTouch called Legal AF. It's what you think. On Wednesdays, Karen Friedman Agnifilo. On Saturdays, I co-anchor it with Ben Meisalis. And it's like a hot take, but better. Two of us analyzing, breaking it down to you so that you can understand it and you can debate the facts around your dinner table, kitchen table, in the streets, on social media, wherever you find yourself wanting to debate somebody who just doesn't understand the facts. Until my next hot take, until the next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.